This will be 200 CSR, February 2012. For the plaintiff, we have Ms. Howard. For defense, we have Ms. Hayes. Ready? Good afternoon. The record should reflect that we are all present. Are the people ready to call their next witness? Yes, Officer Alvarez. Stand at the end of the table and face the clerk to be sworn. Please state your full name and spell it for the record. Paul Alvarez, P-A-U-L-A-L-V-A-R-E-Z. Go ahead. Who are you employed by? The City of Santa Ana Police Department. What's your current occupation? I am currently a detective assigned to the gang unit. How long have you been a sworn peace officer in the state of California? About 17 years. Were you on duty the evening of July 14th, 2010 at 9:10 p.m. and you responded to 306 South Buckley? Yes. How many times have you been to that location that evening? That was my second time. Prior to 9:10, what time were you dispatched to the location the first time? It was around 8:30 p.m. Your Honor, if I can make an objection, I could be wrong, but I believe that the people asked if he was on duty July 14th. If I did, I meant January 14th. I wrote down July also. That's why I was looking at the complaint again. What is the current date? It would have been January. Thank you. Next question. Were you in a marked police car? Yes. And a marked uniform? Yes. Can you describe what your uniform looked like? Navy blue with patches that say Santa Ana on them. I wear a badge on the left chest, a name plate on the right, navy blue pants, and black boots. Also, I have a duty belt. Is that your regular uniform that you wear? Yes, ma'am, that's it. Were you assigned to the call as a follow officer? Yes, ma'am. Is that a term that you are familiar with and could explain? Yes. What is a follow officer? It is the officer who assists the primary handling officer. Did you arrive with Officer Palmer or after him? Shortly after. How much after? From what I observed when I pulled up, I would guess about a minute. Can you describe what you saw as you drove up to 306 South Buckley? As I was pulling up behind Officer Palmer's police car, I saw him standing in front of the residence. It appeared he was speaking with a male who might have been agitated. What makes you believe that? As I observed the male, he appeared to be kind of having his arms stretched out from his sides about shoulder height and moving them kind of quickly from what I can recall. So I parked my police vehicle behind his and started to walk up towards where Officer Palmer was. Now, other than Officer Palmer and this male, how many other people did you observe? I saw about 50 people who were out in front of the residence. And the person you initially saw, Officer Palmer, speaking with, do you see him in the courtroom right now? I do. Can you describe what he is wearing and where he is seated? He is the person sitting next to the attorney at the table. He is wearing a black sweater and dark pants. May the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant. All right, the record may so reflect. Thank you. Next question, please. Now, as you drove up, where did you park? I parked behind Officer Palmer's police car. About how many feet? I would say probably within 3 feet or so. And then what did you do when you pulled up within 3 feet? I got out of the vehicle and I quickly made my way over to where Officer Palmer was speaking with this male. Now, at that point in time, were the other people coming towards your location or not? Yes, they were walking towards Officer Palmer and the male, which also would have been towards my direction. When you say walking in your direction, do you mean they were casually walking towards you? Not at all, ma'am. They were all moving very rapidly. Okay, what happened next? As I approached them, I extended my hands and I told everybody to step back immediately and to remain calm. I was standing between the crowd and Officer Palmer and the man. When you testified, you put your hands up. Can you describe what you did with your hands? I raised my hands up about chest high, palms open, and extended my arms out towards the crowd. I told them to step back. Did the partygoers comply? No. Now, were you hearing anything during this point in time? Several things. What were you hearing? I could hear the crowd yelling loudly. I also heard an argument starting behind me between Officer Palmer and the defendant. Everything was very loud, and I wasn't able to make out what was being said. Did you give any commands to the crowd? Yes, I did. What did you do? I told the crowd to step back and calm down several times. They didn't comply with my commands and kept advancing forward towards me. Did you hear the defendant say anything during that time? Yes, I did. But again, everything was so loud, I couldn't discern what was really being said. Objection. Move to strike the answer as speculation. Overruled. The answer remains. Now, you were facing the crowd, is that right? Yes. Did you know what was going on behind you other than hearing an argument? At one point, I turned around and looked over my shoulder to see what was going on. And when you looked over your shoulder, what did you see? It appeared that Officer Palmer was struggling to handcuff the defendant and trying to put him in the back of the police car. Was the defendant resisting being put in handcuffs at that time? Yes. All right. And did you then turn around and look at the crowd after that? Yes. What had you noticed, if anything, when you looked back at the crowd? It appeared to me that the crowd had gotten bigger and started to encircle the police car and us. Did you have any way for egress or escape? Objection, speculation, overruled. No, I did not. Had anyone in the crowd made physical contact with either you or Officer Palmer at that point? Contact with me? Yes. Describe what happened to you. The crowd kept coming forward and did not comply with my commands to get back. Several people began pushing forward. I started to push back to try to create some space between myself and the crowd and to try to keep people away from where Officer Palmer was with the man. Were you just using your hands when you were pushing the crowd back? I had my baton in both hands across my chest and pushed out that way. Did anyone make contact with you? Yes, several people were pushing against me, trying to get to the defendant. Objection, Your Honor. Sustained. Everything after pushing against me is stricken. What happened after you had been pushed? Well, at some point during this, I had requested backup on my police radio. Had any other officers arrived up to that point? Not yet. At some point, I remember seeing some officers arrive on scene and start to form a line to move the crowd back away from us. In your opinion, did the situation escalate after you were pushed? I believe it did. Did you continue to give command for the crowd to step back? I did, but it was not successful. How long was it before other officers arrived to assist? From when I first arrived, you mean? Yes, only if you know or can estimate for us. The first officers were on scene in 2 minutes, and others continued to respond to the scene thereafter. How long before there was, as you described it, a line of officers? I would estimate 4 to 5 minutes. Do you know whether or not those officers were organized into teams of some sort? Eventually they were. And do you know if there were any arrests made that evening? Yes, there were several. Did you personally place anyone under arrest? No, I did not. Nothing further. Cross. So you did not arrive at the same time as Officer Palmer, right? Correct. And you are basing it on the fact that he was already out of his vehicle when you arrived? Yes. And you saw Officer Palmer speaking to an individual. You didn't know who it was at that time, right? Correct. I thought I heard something earlier, and correct me if I am wrong. Did you say this was your second time out there? Yes. Okay. So you had been out there by yourself or with another officer previously? With another officer. And that was Officer Nelson. Correct. When you went out there the first time, do you recall approximately what time it was? Not exactly, but I believe it was around 8:30 p.m. Did you speak with anybody on that first visit that you made to the scene? No. Did you even get out of your vehicle? No. So you just accompanied Officer Nelson and watched him get out of his vehicle and do something? No. What did you do? By the time I arrived, Officer Nelson had already handled the call and he was getting back into his police car to leave. Now you showed up the second time and you see Officer Palmer speaking to another male, right? Yes. And it appears to you that it was a heated exchange. Is that right? It looked like it was a tense situation. Did you go to assist your fellow officer in his dealings with this person? I immediately went and positioned myself between them and the advancing crowd. Okay, so then you walked past Officer Palmer, right? Yes. What was Officer Palmer doing with the defendant as you walked by him? It looked like he was trying to speak to him. Did the defendant have handcuffs on at that time? No. Okay. When you first observed the two men speaking to each other, where were they in relationship to the police car? I would say they were close to the left front bumper. So then, as you get out of your vehicle and approach, you observe the two gentlemen walk to the rear of the police car, right? That's correct. Does it appear to you that my client is complying with the officer's directions by walking towards the rear of the vehicle? Objection calls for speculation. Sustained. Did you detect any actions by my client that would indicate to you he was intentionally not complying with the officer by walking to the rear of the vehicle? Objection calls for speculation. Overruled. You may answer. No, I did not. So Officer Palmer and my client are now near the rear door or near the rear quarter panel, right? Yes. Are the doors to the vehicle open or closed? They are all closed at that time. And there is a crowd in front of you, correct? Yes. Do you recall a pregnant female being there in front of you? I do. And do you recall that pregnant female asking you what was happening? Yes. Objection, relevance, overruled. Next question, please. Next to that pregnant female was a man named Sam Lucas, right? I don't know if he was next to her at that time. Let me rephrase it. Sam Lucas is standing close to the female, at least within a few people from her, right? Objection, relevance, overruled. I don't know where Mr. Lucas was standing at that time. How many people were directly in front of you as you were attempting to move the crowd back? Well, there were over 50 people at the party. I am asking about people that were immediately in front of you at that time. I would say 5 to 7. Of those 5 to 7 people that are directly in front of you, did you recognize any of them from any previous contacts you possibly had with them? No, I did not. Directly in front of you, there was a man who's later identified to you as Sam Lucas. Is that correct? Objection, lacks foundation, overruled. I don't believe it was at that time. At some point, do you see him there directly in front of you? At some point, okay. That was the point when he came up to inquire what was happening, and then you kicked your leg up at him, correct? Objection, lacks foundation, overruled. I don't recall kicking my leg out at him, no. Do you recall kicking your leg out at anyone while you were positioned between the police vehicle and the residence? No, ma'am. Do you recall placing your baton on the stomach of the woman who was pregnant? Let me be clear. I know I did not do that. Do you know for sure? Objection, argumentative, Your Honor. Sustained. You were giving commands to the crowd. Is that correct? Definitely. During that time you were doing that, did you ever hear anyone else also addressing the crowd? All the officers were directing the crowd to get back to the residence and go inside. Did you hear any of the people directly in front of you tell the crowd to get in the house? You mean people from the crowd? Yes. Were any of them assisting you in trying to manage the other people? Absolutely not. There was a distinct line, and it was the police on one side and the partygoers on the other. Your testimony is at no time did Sam Lucas address the crowd and direct them back to the house. That is my testimony, yes. Are you saying it did not happen or you didn't hear it? Objection. The witness has answered the question. It is asked and answered. Your Honor. Sustained. Let's move on. Are you aware that there was a video made of the events of that evening? That's what I have been told. And looking at this still picture from the video, do you recognize yourself in that photo? The photo quality is not the best, but I believe this is me here by the driveway. Nothing further. Redirect. Yes, Your Honor. Proceed. You testified a few minutes ago that at some point you realized that you had been encircled by a crowd. Do you recall that testimony? Yes. Had you personally been pushed before or after that happened? The pushing was both before and after that. Could you estimate the number of times that you were pushed? I'm not sure of the exact number. I know there was a lot going on. Just as an estimate, could you? Your Honor, I object. Counsel is testifying and giving her opinion instead of just asking a question. Let's just ask the next question, please. Could you estimate the number of times you were personally pushed during this incident before any arrests were made? I know it was 3 times from one man alone, and then the pushing that came from the whole crowd moving forward. Were you ever knocked off your feet, or did you ever lose your balance? The 3 from the one man were forceful, but I was able to maintain my position. Did you ever see Officer Palmer lose his footing and fall down? No, I didn't. I don't believe we had any police officers down on that call. From the time you initially arrived on scene to the time you realized you were encircled, how much time elapsed? I would say maybe about, let me interrupt you. If you don't know, that is the answer. It is perfectly okay to say you don't remember. We don't want you to guess. There was a lot going on in a very short time, and I really can't give an estimate. Nothing further. Recross, no questions. I'm going to excuse this officer.